Wojnarowski joining us now from Spain. How did this happen that it surfaced, and why now, Adrian?
Dan, it surfaced when the Hawks, orchestrated an independent legal firm to go through the organization and look for examples of things like this, emails. They interviewed people, conversations, and this email came up in an investigation. And then it had to be dealt with. And it was, remember, Atlanta has several minority owners. It's been kind of a combative situation for several years. And one of the minority owners pushed for this. And so once this email became known to the group, they had a decision to make on how they were going to handle it. And the NBA, they're saying in Levinson, they're trumpeting the fact that he self-reported this. The way I see self-reporting is you had a crisis of conscience. This thing was out there. You went through your emails, you pulled it out. Not somebody went and found it and, hey, this thing's going to get out, whether you do it or we, move this forward. And the wheels got in motion here over the last month and a half, 2 months, and it led to Levinson finally agreeing to sell his team late Saturday night.
This goes back to what Mark Cuban said, where he said it's a slippery slope we're going down with Donald Sterling. At least, isn't this what he's alluding to?
Well, it is because, and I think people sometimes are just looking at this from the possibility of allegations based on race. And I'm not defending anything Levinson had in there. It was outrageous, and never mind Donald Sterling. But in what other I had heard something was happening here in the last 3 or 4 days, that an owner was in trouble. I never could verify that it was Atlanta. But in calling around the league, some people knew there was, and some organizations had no idea about what was going on. The league in Atlanta kept it pretty quiet right until they announced it. But the sense around the league was not just is there something that I've said or something in related to race, but any transgression that I've ever had, anything I've ever said, any personal failing that I've ever had, can they use that to take away my team or leverage me into a situation like this? And I think that's what Cuban was more talking about, not just that I say something racially insensitive, but in anything. Area of guys' lives, yeah.
Are NBA owners in support of Adam Silver?
They are in support of Silver. There's no question. But when this was all happening with Sterling, and I quoted an official in a column I wrote on Yahoo last night, that he had less support privately than he was getting publicly. Every team and organization issued very stern declarations of a condemnation of Sterling and support of Silver, including Atlanta. They were really outspoken about it. Levinson was. But privately, there's still a lot of people saying to an ownership figure, saying to Adam Silver, hey, now what Cuban said publicly, Cuban had the courage to say publicly what a lot of guys were saying privately. What else is this going to cover? What else could we be vulnerable to as owners, that someone could come in and take our teams away? And so they were worried that it would set a precedent, again, not just on issues of race, but on anything else in their lives or that could be deemed beyond embarrassing to the point of, we can't have you as an owner anymore.
The players talked about the time frame for Donald Sterling to sell the Clippers. Is there going to be an uproar to sell the Hawks before the start of the NBA season, or what's the time frame?
Well, there already is interest in them. There'll be interest in any NBA team because they're all, with the new TV deal coming, with a recent collective bargaining agreement, really only a fool cannot make money owning an NBA team. Now, even in a market like Atlanta, where for years no one has figured out how to make that thing work there. Even when they've had pretty good teams, they haven't been able to connect in that market fan-wise. But they'll have interest, and I don't think once the process gets going here, it takes on a life of its own. I don't see great demands from the players to get it out of his hands. I mean, this thing can't happen overnight. Sterling's, because of legal issues and him suing everybody, that was more complex. You didn't know how long that was going to take. Levinson, I think, will move along faster because he's willing to do this.
Adrian, thanks for joining us on short notice.
Sure thing, Dan. Talk to you soon.
Adrian Wojnarowski joining us from Spain, Yahoo Sports NBA columnist.